We're joined by Diane Brady to talk about Elizabeth Taylor's estate. We spoke about this earlier. How much money is she really leaving behind?
Well, there's the variation is from 600 million to $1 billion, so we should all be so lucky basically to have that range. But around 600 million seems pretty legitimate in terms of when you actually look at what she's made in all these different buckets. So
she's clearly was a very successful actress, but an extremely successful businesswoman. Is there any way to tell if she's made more money in her perfume business and other ventures versus her acting career?
I think there's no question. Now, she was obviously an incredibly successful actress, but she started when she was 10 years old. But the reality is she's sort of this cusp, basically, of what Hollywood was like, because she was under MGM studio contract for much of her career throughout the entire 50s up to her Oscar performance, Butterfield 8. She was basically making what she'd made under contract. Then she got Cleopatra. That was $1 million, plus she got a percentage of gross. That's where a lot of actors make their money these days. Most of her career, she didn't have that. What she did have was incredible celebrity, incredible notoriety, and she took advantage of that. She was a real pioneer because she launched her perfumes back in 1987. These days, we're used to that. Every celebrity has a perfume. Liz Taylor really was one of the first.
And her perfume is still doing exceptionally well.
Incredibly well. I think White Diamonds, the one that everybody knows, that sold about $61 million last year. But she had 10 perfumes. I mean, all told, she had $77 million of sales last year for her perfumes. And then she had costume jewelry for Avon. I mean, she was starting to get incredible money, obviously, for the little guest appearances she did. So
can we break down in more detail some of that money? You'd mentioned $77 million in just perfume sales.
And that's where she made the bulk of her money, basically. We associate her with fragrance, the White Diamond commercial where she throws down the diamonds. That's quintessential Liz Taylor. I think that's where she made most of her money. She was obviously a savvy real estate investor. She invested in art. It's hard to get a handle because she was very private. The last time you really got a good inventory of her real estate was husband number 8's divorce. But back then, 94, 95, her real estate was valued at about $130 million. So you'd have to assume, even with the housing crisis, she probably had a pretty rich real estate portfolio.
Speaking of husband number 8, I can't help but wonder throughout the week as I'm watching all of these Liz Taylor documentaries, I'm sure they all signed a prenup. But was there ever any way throughout these divorces to determine collectively what she ended up paying them?
Well, she did have she married a lot early in her career. One of her husbands died. Richard Burton had, obviously did not need Liz Taylor's money. There was very much, I think, a prenup with Larry, her last husband. And that was why a lot of this came to the courts and people did start to get, lift the curtain a bit. I think by and large, most of her money probably stayed with her. And a lot of the money, too, that, she was out there raising, she was raising for AIDS research because that was a big cause of hers. She raised more than $270 million. A lot of people think a big chunk of her estate will actually go toward that as well.
What about her children? She has 4 children. Do we anticipate that they will be left with a lot of money?
That's a very good question. I would assume that they will be left very well off. She has 4 children, 10 grandchildren, 4 great-grandchildren. She was very close to all of them. You don't hear about a lot of acrimony. Of course, nobody ever knows. So I'm sure they'll be well provided for. But I think at the same time, she was somebody who did take a bigger picture. And I think that a lot of these causes that were important to her, she'll give money to.
Diane, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you.